this week's edition of Ford News, our 10th episode. We talk about the Hunter Biden conviction. We talk about some of the misleading news stories that are out there about President Biden. And we talk about how important the issue of abortion is in this upcoming election. It's all coming your way right now on Ford News. Hey everyone, I'm Brian London. Follow me at Miami Radio Beast on X. He is Jonathan Ford. Follow him at Ford Jonathan 5. And do us a huge favor. Wherever you are listening to this podcast, hit the subscribe button, make a comment. That would be great. And also, if you're listening to this, go check out the new YouTube page. The YouTube channel is kicking butt, but we need more subscribers. So if you're watching this or you're listening to us on the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like this video, hit a thumbs up, and hit the little bell, and that'll notify you when new videos come down. And our double secret executive, secret producer, editor, Matt, does a great job of getting our videos up there, so we appreciate him. And Jonathan, before we get into this week's news, we're recording this on Sunday, June 16th. It's Father's Day, so we have to wish all of our listeners out there a happy Father's Day. I have to wish you a happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day to you as well, and to everybody watching the podcast. Actually, you will be watching this on Monday, but of course, we're recording this on Father's Day. So just happy Father's Day, and take care of each other, and just learn to embrace your loved ones just a little bit better and a little bit tighter on special days, just like we encourage on Mother's Day and on every important day. So just enjoy the day and have fun.
All right, Jonathan, we got to jump into the news. It was a big week. We got a conviction in the Hunter Biden case. 3 felonies, convictions, and not that much deliberation from the jury. Seems like it was a pretty open and shut case for them. And it's funny, you don't see any Democrats saying that the system is rigged or someone was out to get Hunter Biden. Pretty much everyone on the left side of the aisle is pretty much respecting the decision that came down in that trial.
Yeah, the first two counts were obviously lying about drug use on a federal background check. And the third count was possessing a gun while basically being an addict. But like you said, there wasn't much pushback from the Democratic Party. And even President Biden, who was greeted by his son after the conviction, gave a kind of heartwarming moment of hugging his son. And the president stayed and just reiterated his role as a father, seeking support for uh, his support for his son's conviction by basically saying the justice system, works. Uh, and as he said last week, that the president uh, and Jill support their son and love their son unconditionally, even with the past of drug addiction. But the president has been on point and on message with this, that he will not pardon his son and that his son must suffer the consequences of his actions, but that he's encouraged by his defeating addiction or living with addiction every day, just like I did, and knowing that you can beat this substance abuse with the supporting family.
It really is heartwarming to see how the Biden family supported Hunter every day in court. Dr. Jill
Mhm.
Biden was often there. His sister was often there. His aunt was often there. All sorts of relatives and friends were there to support Hunter Biden. And it was very heartwarming to see as soon as that decision came down, Joe Biden left Washington, D.C., headed down to Delaware to be with his son.
Hunter said that after the verdict that he was more grateful for the love and support that his family has showed him, but yet that he was disappointed by the outcome. Obviously, nobody wants to be convicted of felony charges, but his family was there every single day. And another thing that we just need to mention is that there was no crazy press conferences outside of the courtroom every day. There
Ah,
wasn't Democratic representatives that were there every single day trying to announce his innocence. What the Democratic Party did, and what numerous representatives stated, is that they will allow the legal process to play out, and they support a juror's decision to hold people accountable or not to hold people accountable. And this is how the judicial system is supposed to work and court proceedings are supposed to work.
Jonathan, what are your thoughts on how the Hunter Biden situation could impact the November election? Obviously, Hunter Biden's not running for office. He just happens to be a family member of the president. But obviously, this is going to be made into something by the right. I just don't know if Americans care that much about the son of the president, having some issues.
Yeah, I think if anything, this is not obviously this isn't going to persuade any voters to change their views on President Biden, or in fact, sway any voters towards Donald Trump. Because the one thing that we're not doing is we're not voting for Hunter Biden for president. We're voting for President Biden for president. But if anything, it shows a more humane, sympathetic dad that only wants the best for his son, and that he understands that his son committed crimes according to a jury, and that he still has to be there to support him through the process of addiction. And we just got to be honest, like, for somebody like me that's went through addiction, there's nothing uh, that you can't do with support. There's nothing you can't defeat without support, and there was multiple people that helped me along the way of being addicted to alcohol. And just like what Hunter's relying on right now is the support of his family, because like Hunter, every day I wake up, I'm an addict, and that's the way I treat it. And every day Hunter's going to wake up and he will be an addict, and that's the way he needs to treat it. But I don't see this persuading anybody's vote, just because the majority of people have already made their mind up, and the only one you're going to persuade is some of the independent voters. And I think they'll see through this, just like what I did right away, is that this is the judicial system working, and it just proves that President Biden isn't going to get involved in his son's legal battles.
I think when you look at how the Biden family has treated Hunter and given him the love and support that he needed, I think that could almost work in President Biden's favor because it shows that he is a very caring dad, that he has a heart, that he is empathetic towards his son, that he understands his son had a problem and is trying to do better. And I'm sure it's extremely hard for President Biden to see his son convicted in this trial. But it shows the American
Yeah,
people that this is a real family that has real feelings, real emotions, and cares about one another.
yeah, and President Biden in life in general has been hit with multiple hardships throughout his life, just like Hunter Biden losing his brother Bo. But President Biden lost a wife, a daughter, a son who served in the military, that was exposed to toxins in Afghanistan and later died of brain cancer, which President Biden passed legislation to make sure that those military service members get the treatment that they deserve in the VA hospitals. But there's nobody that's handled tragedy uh, with more grace than what President Biden has. And you have in the past where Lindsey Graham.
If you can't admire Joe Biden as a person, then it's probably you got a problem. You need to do some self-evaluation, because what's not to like? Here's what I can tell you, that life can change just like that. Don't take it for granted. Don't take relationships for granted. I called him after Bo died, and he basically said, well, Bo was my soul. We've talked for a long time. He came to my ceremony and said some of the most incredibly heartfelt things that anybody could ever say to me. And he's the nicest person I think I've ever met in politics.
Is that right?
He is as good a man as God ever created.
He gets emotional talking about just the person that President Biden is. And you also have Meghan McCain that talked about when her father was, of course, dying, the first person that reached out to her with emotions and sat down and spoke with her was President Biden. We have these countless uh, accounts to where people talk about how caring and how graceful he is on with people on both sides of the political spectrum. He reaches out.
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to take a step back sometimes from all of the political, topics and everything that's going on, and just take a step back and think about the two men that you have a choice to vote for in November, and who was more like you and caring and empathetic and a family man, and who doesn't care about you and is not a family man and empathetic. And forget about their views on whatever topic is important to you, just about the men themselves. I think that's really important to show the differences.
Yeah, and what when I debate or have conversations with people, when they say that they're not sure who to vote for, because it's a lesser of two evils, the one thing that I always point out to them is uh, President Biden hasn't been found liable of fraud, Trump University, liable of fraud, Trump charities, liable of fraud, Trump organization, liable of fraud, Trump, found liable of sexual abuse with the E. Jean Carroll case, which the judge later on clarified that the jury did technically find him guilty of rape, but the New York law uh, pretty much defines that as penetration through genitalia. But that's where I always tell people, like, President Biden is not that person, and I don't really care. And I'm just going to say this: I don't really care what policies Trump promises. I don't really care if he promised to give me $200,000 tomorrow. As a person, I cannot vote for Donald Trump knowing the person that he is and the things that he's been accused, found liable, and convicted of, including the 34 charges falsifying business records that just happened recently. And I don't understand how the American people can continue to vote for somebody like that when the president of the United States, the highest position of power in the world, is supposed to signal what type of country we are and what we stand as a country. And we're going to allow somebody like potentially somebody like Donald Trump to once again get reelected into the office.
Unfortunately, Jonathan, I think a lot of the Trump support, if not most of it, is simply about fear, and fear of
Mhm.
this country becoming browner. Not to mince words, but that's what this is about. It's about people feeling like the white majority is going to be a thing of the past, and that scares a lot of people. And that's what the Trump brand stands for, and that's why they vote for him. It's not because of his policies or tax breaks for billionaires or whatever he's spouting about. It's because they are afraid of living in a country where soon they will be in the minority. That has
Regardless of who they vote for,
Yeah,
they will be the minority.
that is
In
correct.
the future, they will be the minority. I am going to be the minority. I accept that. But what they really fear with being minority is not necessarily just becoming minority, but I think what they fear is what the minority will do to them after what, of course, Black people went through as far as slavery is what are minorities going to do to white people to kind of get revenge on what happened previously, and I think that's what scares them the most. But yeah, we're going to be the minority, and just embrace it and understand that diversity is the greatest thing that this country can give the world, and the greatest thing that you can give your family members is allowing that diversity in your life.
Yeah, hey people, welcome to planet Earth. It's diverse. Be a part of it. All right, we're
Yeah,
going to take a break here on Ford News. On the other side, we have to get into some of this coverage of President Biden. It's been misleading is an understatement. the way videos have been edited and articles have been written, just completely mistruths have been thrown out there, and we got to talk about it. And we do that on the other side. You're listening and watching Ford News. Welcome back to Ford News. He is Jonathan Ford. Follow him at FordJonathan5. I'm Brian London. Follow me at Miami Radio Beast. Follow the show at Ford News Podcast. And if you're listening, hit the subscribe button. And if you're watching, also hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel. That's right. If you're listening, head to the new YouTube channel, hit subscribe, hit like on the video, hit the bell so you get notified when new videos drop, and we will really appreciate you. We always appreciate our audience, whether you're listening or watching, no doubt about it. All right, Jonathan, we got to get into this. Some videos were dropped this week about news items like President Biden being over at the G7 conference, and they had some paratroopers doing a display, a demonstration, and coming down out of the airplane, and there's President Biden with the rest of the G7 leaders looking up, and there's a New York Post conveniently cropping a video so you don't see what Joe Biden is doing.
Twitter account, RNC Research, which is managed by Donald Trump's campaign, shared a clip which appeared to show President Biden wandering off from other world leaders before the Italian prime minister comes over to alert him about a group photo. That moment is also on the front cover of today's New York Post with the headline, "Meander in Chief." But these photos and the clip you just saw don't show the full context of what was happening. Here's a look at a different angle from that event after a skydiver landed in front of the president and other leaders. President Biden turns to his left where there are troops. The president appears to say something to them and give them the thumbs up before he's tapped on the arm by the Italian prime minister. So this is the kind of thing that gets amplified. You have an organization like the New York Post, many others that picked it up that way, delivered to them right from Trump's campaign with no context, no double checking it, no looking at very widely available different angles.
The New York Post took that edited video and made it appear to the American people that President Biden just wandered off and then had to be ushered back, when the truth is that he was engaging with parachuters just off his left-hand side. The video that I posted on X shows the parachuters landing and President Biden walking over, and then later directed towards a shoot with other world leaders in the G7 meeting. So, and New York Post just did this again this morning, where they took a edited video of a campaign event with Jimmy Kimmel, Barack Obama, George Clooney, Julia Roberts, Jack Black, and they all have this star event for President Biden showing an endorsement and raising $30 million. And the video that they edited out or kind of altered made it appear that Barack Obama was kind of guiding President Biden off the stage holding hands, when actually the video that I just posted on X shows President Biden waving at the audience, engaging with supporters, laughing with Jimmy Kimmel and President Barack Obama, and then Barack Obama putting his hands around them and then both smiling at each other, walking off stage. And just the horrible fact about we can't even trust a New York Post to be truthful and the media to be truthful 100% of the time, instead engaging in clickbaits, is just crazy to me and completely off the wall. And I encourage everyone once again to stop feeding into that type of media and call them out for exactly what they are.
You know, really what it comes down to is, Jonathan, is that's all they have, is them altering videos to make it seem like Joe Biden is, doesn't know where he is or where he's going. Whereas anytime you see anyone come out of a meeting with Joe Biden, they will tell you that he is on top of his game, as he's always been. On the other side of things, you had a bunch of CEOs meet with Donald Trump, and they came out of that meeting and said they thought he was out of his mind. And we saw him, He gives these doddering speeches for an hour or more
Oh,
about batteries and boats and sharks, and he's off in La La Land, and the media is just like, oh, that seems fine, but Joe Biden looks kind of old, so we'll just edit this video and make it seem like he doesn't know where he's going.
yeah, the CEOs that were reported as a source that came out and basically told somebody that he what lacked focus, couldn't
Wow.
stay on topic. And these are CEOs that said that they went in there with the mindset of being a Trump supporter or supporting some of his policies and ideas, but walked out completely alarmed by just the conversation that they had with him. And this kind of goes in with the 42 other Trump administration members that after he lost re-election that came out and said that they wouldn't vote for him because he's basically deranged and knows nothing about foreign policies or how the government works, and that he's basically an idiot is what they're calling him, not to make a personal attack. But that's what we're finding more and more with the media, is that they would want to go directly at President Biden because of age, when they don't talk about the infrastructure bill that he passed, the PAC Act that he passed, the CHIP Act that he passed, the continuous job growth that are beating expectations, GDP that is at some points at a record high, and he continues to do this with his administration. But you don't hear that reported on as much as these edited videos that are complete lies. And I just wish the media would start telling the American people the truth. Because listen, we have one of the greatest economies right now, but the polling that comes out and people that are talking about it, the reason why they don't feel this is because the media isn't talking about it. Like, Jim may not be having a good experience with this economy, but there might be 10 other people that are, with inflation at a reduction. Walmart and Target admitting they're going to reduce prices on tens of thousands of different products. There's tons of things that the media could be reporting on instead of these continued lies and disinformation about President Biden.
You talk about fact versus the myth about the economy, and the economy is in a great spot, but you talk about Target and Walmart lowering prices. One of the issues is that many companies are taking advantage of their customers
Mhm.
by keeping prices high when they don't need to be. One example, where I live down in South Florida, the major supermarket chain is Publix. Publix made $4.3 billion in profit last year, yet their prices are still exceedingly much higher than they need to be or any of their competitors. Why is that? Well, because people are willing to go to the supermarket and pay those prices. And as long as people are paying what they believe to be too much for eggs and milk and all the basics, they're going to think the economy is not doing well. Man, I'm paying so much for milk, the economy must not be good. But that's just not the case. Those are just companies taking advantage of the American public. And again, it's the media's fault. Not all the media. I've seen reports on even some mainstream media sites talking about this situation. But generally speaking, you just don't see that out there, that these companies are just literally fleecing Americans because they can.
Yeah, and there's a difference between inflation, which is gauged at the federal government, versus price gouging, which you just hit on, which a lot of the companies are seeing profits exceeding 256%. But in the article that I read with Walmart, is they're seeing some of the pushback from consumers as far as product buying and power, to where they're now being forced kind of to scale back these prices. But even Walmart during this time doubled in profit during the pandemic. And we also have to understand the cause of inflation is federal spending and supply and demand. And while we can't blame one particular president on inflation because it's global, the spending through the Trump administration and the Biden administration obviously led to the inflation. The point here is, though, is that President Biden has done a lot with the Inflation Reduction Act to actually reduce or minimize the damage of inflation throughout the United States. And we are one of the leading countries in the world as far as driving that number down. When you have some countries like Venezuela and Russia that are still seeing hundreds of percent increase in inflation, but you have the United States and Canada leading the charge as far as reducing that number.
Yeah, it's all of these numbers, all of these stats just have to be put into the mind of the American people some way, somehow, and that's what we're trying to do, right? Bring the truth, bring the facts to the people, and hopefully they get the information they need to make the decision that needs to be made in November. All right, we're gonna take another break. On the other side, it's our favorite segment we do every week. That's right, it's the Ford Fact Check. On the other side, you're listening and watching Ford News. Welcome back to Ford News. He is Jonathan Ford. Follow him on X at FordJonathan5. I'm Brian London. Follow me at Miami Radio Beats. Follow the show at Ford News Podcast. Hey, wherever you are listening to this, and if you're watching this on YouTube, just hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the thumbs up, make a comment, do all those nice things that lets other people know that we are out there bringing you facts and truth. All right, Jonathan, what are we fact checking this week? I have a feeling you've got some numbers, some stats you're going to spit at us.
Donald Trump, over the recent weeks and months, has now kind of, I don't know if he's changed his position or if he's just trying to sway voters, but he was at one point in position of a federal ban on abortion, and now he's kind of leading it up to, or leaving it up to the states' rights and the most recent rallies that he's had. But what I would like to just talk about is that the majority of Americans still support the right or pro-choice to have an abortion, where statistically 63% of Americans support legal abortion in most cases, while 36% say they don't support uh, legal abortion in most cases. But the troubling pattern with this is that, on the Republican side, is that they don't even support legal abortion in cases of rape or incest. When in Texas alone, there's 23,000 forced pregnancies by rape, and these women that went through this tragic life-altering event now have to carry that baby to full term without any type of law allowing them to have a say over their body. So that's why it's extremely important that we get this message out. And I see this being a huge focus for voters coming in November, where the Democratic Party and even independents, and what the reason why I want to focus on independents is because we always know that the Democratic Party is going to show 85% um, that say that legal, or that abortion should be illegal in most cases. But even the independents are starting to grow to where they're at 54% for legal, in most cases, for a woman to seek health care over her body. So we're starting to see this Democrat change, and I just believe that, especially in Florida, your neck of the woods, Brian, where that's actually on the ballot for this election cycle. And we kind of talked off the air here that uh, President Biden, by recent polls, if you believe polls, and I'm one of the most skeptical of them, but it shows that Biden is only points, or 3 or 4 percentage points, um, of taking Florida in the 2024 election, which is well within the margin of error. And we've seen this, which we talked about before, I believe it was in Alabama, where a state senate, she ran on IVF and abortion in one of the most red districts and won. And we just seen in Ohio this week of a red state that was plus 30% Donald Trump, that the Republican Party, who outspend the Democratic Party by 1 to 10, basically barely won by an 8%, which was once a plus 30 Republican Party. And I think that's where the polls are going to get a lot of this wrong.
Listen, for those voters whose, they're a single issue voter and abortion is their single issue, they're going to be overwhelmingly going to be voting for Joe Biden. There's no doubt about it. The women in this country will get rallied around that issue. But we have to be truthful and tell everyone the number one issue is always going to be the economy, stupid, as James Carville once said in 1992. That's always going to be the number one issue. And it is, going back to last segment, we talked about the messaging that the Democratic Party and Joe Biden and the government has to do on the strength of the economy. That's why, because the economy is going to be the number one issue in the election. That's not to say that abortion is not extremely important as an issue. The right to choose is a huge issue in this country and needs to be focused on, and women need to look at their freedom to decide their own situation when it comes to their own health care. And that's really, really important as we head towards November.
Yeah, and pro-choice doesn't mean pro-abortion.
Correct.
It just means that women should have the right to make choices over their own body. And you're absolutely right. The economy is typically always the number one issue for the American people. And that's why people like us come into play, where we can kind of educate the voters that the economy is doing much better now than it even was outside of inflation and interest rates for housing, which basically have zero control from the president in most standards, is doing much better. We have the lowest Black unemployment rating, job growth continuing to exceed expectations, stock market, 401k through the roof. So the economy is doing significantly better. And that's why when people ask me when I do debates and stuff like that on social media, are we better today than we were 4 years ago? And the answer has to be yes. The reason is because 4 years ago, because of a major disaster of a pandemic and the response from President Trump, is what caused a lot of what we're going on now. We can go into he took away the playbook that the Obama administration left him as far as handling the pandemic. We could go off that he downplayed the pandemic.
Always play it down. I still like playing it down because I don't want to create a panic.
That was March. It was early in that period when COVID was heading through America, but it was also clear this couldn't be played down.
That he was in recordings stating that, oh my God, this is airborne, this is going to be bad, but yet going to the American people and stating that in April this will be just poof and go away.
It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear. It will go away. Just stay calm. It will go away. It'll go very quickly. I think we're going to be in very good shape. You know, it is going away, and it will go away, and we're going to have a great victory.
Because the heat's going to take it away, or disinfectants, or shining lights in your body, just crazy things that he came up with.
In the pandemic, I unfortunately had the coronavirus twice, and it's weird, but my doctor each time, despite I asked him about this, but he never told me I should inject myself with bleach. That just didn't seem to be something that was recommended. I don't know. That's what I heard. So I'm just saying.
And you hear a bunch of these crazy stories on X about just like the vaccine didn't work or the mask didn't work, when the vaccine, of course, didn't stop you from getting COVID-19, because what the vaccine did was lessen the chances of dying or being hospitalized. And mask, of course, would slow the spread of an airborne virus that we had. And the reason why science had to change is because viruses continuously mutate, because their mutation is actually their way of trying to survive
Correct.
and live on. And then another talking point is that the vaccine had no trial period or was just thrown at everybody. When vaccines are actually made uh years in advance, years and years and years in advance, like some of the vaccines that we have for flu or whatever are 10 years old, 15 years old or whatever. But what they had to do with the COVID vaccine is they actually had to find the protein in the vaccine that would fight off the COVID-19. And once they found that protein, it makes it a lot simpler for them to do the testing, get it approved, and get it sent out.
Jonathan, you just need to stop confusing people with the truth. Because people don't want to hear the truth or the facts. They just want to believe what some talking head tells them or someone on X tells them. They don't want to be confused with what's really the facts and the truth of a story. But we know this. One thing we will always pledge to do on Ford News is make sure that we are giving you the truth and giving you the facts. It's so important to us, Jonathan.
Yeah, and it's not about clickbaits or anything like that. Is we need to have a conversation with each other that truth outweighs being right. And what I basically mean by that is if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you don't know, you don't know. And that's the conversations that I'm starting to even have with Mega, if you would, on TikTok is basically having those conversations with them for one, just to see where they are on a political spectrum, but also just to see how informed they are. And not to dig personally, but I am astonished, Brian, and I told you this, just us personally talking as friends, that I was astonished by how ill informed that the mega voters are. And sure, there's some ill informed people on the Democratic side or independent side, but it's just astonishing to me that they can't name off a single piece of legislation that Donald Trump passed or a piece of single legislation that President Biden passed, and that's just because the majority of the voters that are out there are not well in touch with what is actually being reported or what is actually being done. They're basically basing their vote off of emotions or what they heard when just because you're paying for gas, just to use an example, $3.12 here, where Brian lives, it might be $4.84, but the average gas is $3.23 throughout the United States. And what that just states is that just because you're feeling the pressure doesn't mean, in general, the whole United States is. And I think that's where our messaging has to come across is that just like today, I went to go get gas and it was 291 and
You're only
that's
paying $2.91.
lower. Yeah, it was 291 this morning when I filled up, so a lot cheaper. But then we also have to inform people. As you don't hear me saying here, like, "Thank you, President Biden, for the 291 gas prices," because once again, the gas prices are not controlled by the president; it's controlled by OPEC. When previously on a fact check, I stated that we are actually producing and exporting more oil today than we have in any administration for any president at 13.4 million barrels per day. We're actually producing more natural gas. We're actually more energy independent today than what we have been through any administration. And the reason why that doesn't come right away to the gas prices, it's because it's that gas or oil is sold off to the market, and then the market dictates the pricing. Also, just I want to point out one more thing here is that everyone keep having these talking points when I talk about or have these debates with Mega about the Keystone Pipeline XL or the XL pipeline, and they keep blaming like President Biden of not of these job losses and the oil that could have rescued the gas stations with amazing gas prices and all that. But I want to just fact check just a few things regarding that, Brian, real quick. Is that the XL pipeline was only 80% done, so it was not operational. The federal courts ruled that there was environmental concerns because it was basically going into Native American land that we have no reason to be just taking over once again and imposing our will. So that's why President Biden put a stop to the XL pipeline. But also, what we also but also there's a Keystone pipeline that is operational. Uh, but the fact about this is that it's not owned by the United States, it's actually owned by Canada, and it's actually tar sand, which it can't be refined to gasoline, and it actually goes exports out to other countries for to their refineries, but it's not owned and it's still operational, and it would not have no bearing on our gas prices here in the United States.
Once again, the facts and the truth. Mentioned messaging, and notice we are messaging at you from multiple channels, whether it be our podcast, which you can get on Audible or iHeart or Spotify or Apple, or now on the YouTube channel. And Jonathan's making a show of himself on TikTok. We'll be on Instagram soon. We are going to hit you from every single angle. So wherever you can find us, go and find us. We appreciate you. All right, it's time for us to get out of here. And before we do, once again, got to wish everyone, all the dads out there, hope you had a great Father's Day. Yeah, without a doubt. Hope you had a chance to maybe get a nap in, or get some quiet time out on the hammock in the yard. Whatever it is, we hope you got to have a great Father's Day. We always appreciate everyone for listening and watching, and we'll check you next time here on Ford News.
Thank y'all.